Today is Monday, the 3rd of August 2026, and I am here with Benjamin, and we are going to talk about the second half of his year-long medical leave in 2023.
Chapter 14, Ed's Whisper. 2 weeks after the call, my mother and I were on a flight to Thailand. The body had committed, the mind hadn't understood what the body had committed to yet. It didn't set in until we landed in Chiang Rai, Thailand. A van from the rehab center picked us up at the airport. The driver and a therapist were inside. Somewhere along the drive, the therapist turned around in his seat and asked if I wanted to stop at 7-Eleven to pick up any cigarettes before we got to the facility. I looked at my mother. Why would I want to stop for cigarettes? I had been a marijuana addict for 2 years, but I had never smoked a cigarette in my life. Why did they expect me to want to stop? I didn't understand the place I was headed to. The facility itself was resort-like. It sat in the hillsides of the rainforest in northern Thailand. Each client had their own separate building, private room, private bathroom. Nothing like the asylum-type environment I had been bracing for. The first conversation I had with another client was a question. Was I afraid of insects and lizards? I found out why fast. The first night there, jet lag woke me at 1 in the morning. When I opened my eyes, there were lizards crawling all over the ceiling of my room. We were in the rainforest. It was my 3rd or 4th day. There was a man in the program named B. B was a meth addict. I don't remember what the conversation topic was that morning, or whether something specific had set him off, or whether he was just having one of those days that's common in rehab when the brain demands the old cycle and the environment can't provide it. Whatever it was, it broke him. He stood up, left the morning group, walked downstairs to the bathroom directly below us, and we could hear him yelling at himself, screaming in the bathroom while the meeting tried to continue above him. And in the middle of his breakdown, Ed was whispering to me, "See, that's what addiction is, not what you have. You don't scream in bathrooms. You don't break in front of people. You don't have a problem." Who is Ed? Ed is the name I gave to my eating disorder. ED. He started as a healthy pattern, the fasting, the discipline, the things a person does to be healthy. But the longer he was around, the more extreme he became. The fasting, the binging, the purging. What had started as health had become the thing that took control of me. That was the whisper. Someone whose version looked worse than mine. A B, so my situation was manageable. The comparison never ran out. I was in rehab for substance addiction. The substances were being cleared. But the food piece, the part of me that didn't have access to binging and purging anymore because of the structure of the place, had pivoted to controlling each meal. Breakfast and dinner were the portions I was giving myself. I cut weight, the disorder finding the only opening available. What I had with me in there was parts work. I worked it harder over those 2.5 weeks than I had in the 7 months leading up to the trip. Repetition, the skill like any other skill, no single moment. I stayed at the facility for only 2 more weeks. The only meaningful thing that happened in the remaining time was writing my story. The program required it, the whole story, from childhood through the stroke, through everything that came after. The first time I had put it on a page ever. The food piece was running underneath the program, and the program wasn't built to see it. By the end of the 2.5 weeks, I knew this wasn't the right place for what I actually needed. I left at the end of July and took a flight south to Bangkok. I spent the next 4 weeks in Bangkok with my mother and my extended Bhutanese family. We were staying in a high-rise apartment in the city. The days had a shape. 4 a.m. I'd wake up. By 4:30, I was down on the 11th floor in the garden, a green space inside the building with a walking path running around a pool and a tennis court. Journal with me. I'd sit outside in the dark with the city quiet below, working with my parts, continuing to build trust, each part getting more familiar, the landscape of the mind getting clearer. The shift had started in Chiang Rai. The parts work in rehab had been the first time I had put internal growth over external production, and I kept the order in Bangkok and an hour and a half or two of journaling. Then around 6 or 6:30 I'd go for a run on the walking path in the garden or down on the streets of Bangkok, same metronome cadence as Houston and Zutphen, 130 to 150 beats per minute, body matching the beat. By the time I came back, the city was alive, cars moving, people starting their days. My family was awake. The day with them would run from there. I was still fasted, coconut water, espressos through the morning and afternoon. Then my one meal. A couple of days a week, I'd buy edibles from one of the dispensaries in Bangkok. I wasn't smoking anymore. More times than not, the edibles led into a binge. Sometimes a purge after, but more often just the binge. I returned to Houston at the beginning of September and was home for a month. At the beginning of October, Arjan and Linda's stroke clinic was hosting their retreat in Cyprus. I was on a plane heading there, and I spent 2.5 weeks in Cyprus. And it was the first time I had been in a community of people who were living inside the same body architecture I had been carrying for 6 years. The post-stroke body, the spasticity, the side that didn't move the way the other side did, the cramps, the limp, the hand that wouldn't open, the post-stroke body trying to meet the demands of the pre-stroke mind. In every other room I had been in for the past 6 years, I had been the only one living with that body. In Cyprus, I was at home, and the work I did there was with other clients who weren't as far along in their stroke recovery as I was. I watched them struggle with what I had struggled with 3 or 4 years earlier. The affected hand that wouldn't open, the affected foot that wouldn't pick up the way the other one did, the frustration with the body that wouldn't recover at the pace the mind demanded. I had been in their position. I knew the shape of it from the inside. And I watched their small improvements, movements they hadn't been able to make a month before, things they used to do pre-stroke and were rediscovering. When it landed, you could see it in their whole body, the way you can see it in a kid doing something for the first time, the whole body lighting up, the wave of energy rushing through them, like they were a little kid again. I had had those moments too, the run on the streets of Zutphen, the metronome, the body matching the beat. I knew what those small jumps felt like from the inside. If Ben can do it, then I can recover too. That was what I represented for them. The thing no one had been able to represent for me when I was at that stage in recovery. There had been no one further along or who understood in any room I had been in. In Cyprus, I was that person for someone else. When the 2.5 weeks in Cyprus ended, Arjan and Linda asked me to come back to Zutphen with them. That had been Linda's invitation when I was a client at the original facility a year and a half earlier, to come back as part of the next phase. The next phase had been Cyprus, where I had just spent 2.5 weeks volunteering, and I went with them. Another week and a half at the original facility working with their team, except now I was on the other side of the relationship. Zutphen felt like home now. Not a new town, a place I recognized, a place where I could be myself. Then one night in Amsterdam before the flight home to Houston, what I carried onto the flight home was something I had never carried before. For the first time, I didn't need to answer the "who are you" question with an external identity. I could be my authentic self with this group of people, Arjan, Linda, the clients in Cyprus, the team in Zutphen, and it was enough. The question that had been running since June of 2018 had its first honest answer. Not football, not a student coach, not a marijuana addict in recovery, not a stroke patient, just the self.